Hey there, I'm Taz Singh, and I've been working with communities for as long as I can remember. Fundamentally, communities are made up of people, so this is my journey going to those communities and talking to those people. Come along with me. Amazing, I'm back, and this time I'm here with Dan. So if you've seen the videos about Andrew or Maggie or Mark, you might have seen a common theme there, which is Dan, this guy right here. And so, yeah, good to see you, man. How are you?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming. I mean, like, I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. I'm not sure if my cat will come around, but my cat has been loving this guy. She just wants all the pets and all the cuddles from Dan. And I'm pretty sure you have two cats too, right?
No, just
Oh,
one.
you just have one cat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's that's awesome. For some reason, I thought I saw a video of you with two cats.
No, that didn't happen.
I must be thinking of someone else. I don't know. But you have your own cat, so I'm not sure if my cat's like smelling your cat on you or something and just wants to like come say
I don't
hello.
know. I don't know if it's gonna affect it the other way, where I go home to my cat and he's gonna be pissed and talk to other cats. So
you have to keep your cat separate. You got to keep your cat separate. But yeah, it's awesome to have you again. I mean, I've known Dan for I guess a couple of years now in person, but really I got to know you from your work, and so really from your work back in the day on React Hot Loader, and that's kind of where I started following you and kind of obviously as an outsider followed your journey from there. But I'm curious about what was your journey before that? Like how did you even get to Hot Loader? Because I mean, from my own experience around then, I think it was like 2015 or something, 2014, 2015, I forget the exact dates that you were working on Hot Loader, but like React was kind of foreign to me. Webpack was foreign to me. The whole concept of hot loading was foreign to me. And so like, how do you even get to that point? Like, I'm kind of curious. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like I don't actually know if the audience knows what you mean by the hot loader. I guess maybe like because the project name, it kind of just. Like that project is not really the way we do that now, right?
You're right. Yeah.
Now it's just default in React App and Next.js.
Now it's technically React Refresh, I think.
Fast Refresh.
Fast Refresh. Fast Refresh is kind of like the technical name for it, but like you're right. Like that library name is kind of showing my age a little bit.
Yeah.
Like even knowing what that library is
we actually intentionally distanced it from that name because the original React Hot Loader project, it just had so many issues with it.
Oh, really?
So people thought that, it was super flaky, it'll never be, good enough to be the default and stuff like this. So Fast Refresh was intentionally named differently to distance it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea. Okay, so maybe I should stop talking about that now.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit confusing because but I think the concept of hot reloading, most people probably know what it is.
Yeah. But like how did he start? Like I'm assuming you didn't start just writing essentially like hot loader way back in the day or like working on fast refresh. I think you worked on fast refresh these like more recently, right? Yeah. You didn't just start with that. I hope. So like how did you get into programming and what was your journey up to that point?
Yeah, so I started programming, I think around the age of 12.
Oh, wow.
And it was completely by accident because, so I love doing PowerPoint presentations. That was like my favorite thing. Well, it actually makes sense, right? Like I love to do talks now, or talks are presentations.
But as a 12-year-old giving PowerPoint presentation, come on.
Yeah, no, we had some school assignments, but it's just like presentation about different types of trees or whatever. But I like there were like a lot of effects you could add in PowerPoint, so you could add a fade in, and you could like have a whole sequence like this thing fades in and then this thing slides and then something appears and you click and it plays a sound and whatever. So that was kind of fun. And then I noticed accidentally that, well, I was just going through all menus in PowerPoint. So I was like, open, file, click on everything in the file, like edit, click on everything in edit. So like to explore the entire...
How bored were you as a child?
Yeah. I have ADHD. So I was kind of exploring depth first, I guess. Like the entire thing. And at some point I found service macros. And I was like, I don't even know what that word means.
I'm surprised you still even remember like the menuing system, that's crazy. Wow, okay.
Yeah. But I mean, it left an impression on me.
Apparently, yeah.
And Yeah, and like if you press like service makers, then there will be like a tiny recording thing. So it kind of shows like a UI, like a tape player. So it has like a record button, a play button, a stop button, like something like this. And you can like press record, do something like, for example, move some object, then press stop. And then if you double click it, it'll like show a code editor that shows with that object, like whatever thing, picture box 1, dot left equals dot left plus 10 or something like this. And like I changed the number and then it did a different thing. Like when I press play, it would like move it differently. I'll be like, okay, I get this.
Yeah.
And it had autocomplete, so I could like press dot and it would show all the properties. And so I would try like every property and see, what does it make, like opacity. I didn't even know the words because I didn't know English very well.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like I actually learned some English words from that. So I learned some English words from Visual Basic.
Oh, wow.
Because so that language.
I think Visual Basic must be some really weird English to learn as well.
Yeah, like because I didn't know how to pronounce them. Like for example, like there was like public event, and I thought that it means that you say like public event. And another thing that really confused me was it used Courier New as the font, like the default font.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And L and capital I are very similar.
Yeah.
And so in all examples where it says like else if, I would read it as else elf.
Else elf?
But anyway, I bought so I learned that this thing is called VBA script, like the thing that and like VBA, I think it's called just maybe VBA, I don't know.
It's like, yeah, I think it was Visual Basic 6 at that time, so I think it was just VB6.
Yeah, but that's different. Visual Basic 6 is like a full-fledged thing, and then VBA is a thing inside Microsoft Office.
For some reason, I thought it was still VB6 in there, but yeah, I forget. I certainly wasn't doing as many macros as him.
It definitely was. It was a separate brand. I remember this well. Because I bought a book on like VBA, and it's more limited. I think VBA is a bit more limited than the full.
So basically, after this interview, I'm going to go and endorse him for VBA on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows.
I think maybe you can't do DLL. What is that thing? DLL import? No, maybe that was from .NET. But there was a thing that lets you call native APIs. I think it was disabled in the Office version.
Oh, got you. But
I'm not entirely sure.
So essentially for me, I've done more VB6. I've never done any macros. Yeah. And so I remember specifically in VB6, you could call native APIs.
That was awesome. That was amazing.
I can relate to what you're saying from, essentially I used to play around with Dreamweaver as a kid. And so it was kind of the same thing. You kind of like drag and drop and like you can kind of go look at the HTML and CSS and all that and see what it was creating and learn from that. But then a bunch of years later, for our comp sci curriculum in high school, like we had to build a bunch of programs using VB6. Mm-hmm. And so we just used to prank like everyone with that. Like I remember a friend of mine, he now works at Microsoft. I think he just switched to Amazon recently. Essentially he worked on the server for this and I worked on the client for this. And we built like a chat messaging app, like essentially for our class. Mm-hmm. And we just used to prank people so badly. So basically what we used to do is we used to say essentially if both of us were in the same class, I used to put in like if name like equals Dan, then essentially launch like a bat file like from the same like from the same code base, and what that bat file would do on Windows, it would actually hibernate your computer in a loop. And so you'd be like name equals Dan, enter, and then like your computer would just hibernate, and then you turn it back on and it would hibernate, and then you turn it back on and it would hibernate, turn it back on and it would hibernate. And so I remember very well that like a VB6 you could execute like actual like system commands and like system files and stuff. Yeah, so I also use
system commands for pranking people because I learned like VBScript first. I bought a book on it in the subway. Like they would sell, because it was in Russia. They would sell like I guess pirate copies of like software. Like you get like Visual Studio, like Ultimate Architect Enterprise, blah 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 blah, for like $1.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, maybe $2.
Yeah, wow, okay. That's a good deal. Wow, okay. Because like I think buying that over here like would be like what, $30, $40, $50, something like that, right? And so
I think the Architect edition would be like $2,000 or $5,000.
Oh, wow.
Because it's it has all the fancy things that I actually completely use. Well, as I remember, it was like UML moduling or something. Like who needs that, right?
Yeah.
But But yeah, and I bought some books. There were, translations, actual like physical books. Internet was not super. It didn't have a lot of information in Russian at the time.
Yeah.
Although there was some, like I found the forum and I started talking there.
Yeah, like I remember, like I'm not sure about you. I'm not sure about you, but I remember vividly the first time I saw the internet. It was like 1995. We just moved to Canada from South Africa, and like that's when we got internet. I remember you had to install internet on Windows 95. It wasn't built into the OS. You had to install. You had to configure it yourself. Go through the whole dial-up modems thing, and then I remember my dad was talking on AOL Instant Messenger to a guy in Russia. And he was like, take a look at this. Like I'm here now in Newfoundland, Canada, talking to someone across the world in Russia. How cool is that? I'm just like I didn't really like click to me. I'm just like that's cool, but like I didn't like it. Like I imagine for him and for people, of the older generation, like especially, you know what I mean? Like it's the first time you were able to do anything like that. Like that's insanely remarkable. For us, I mean, of course, we kind of grew up with that, but I still remember that memory of like the first time we saw and experienced the internet. Yeah. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. I was just saying, like I learned like VBA first, and then learned about Visual Basic 6, so I also bought it, also got a book, and found the forum and started, well, I didn't tell anybody I was like 13 at the time, so I kind of pretended to be an adult and started like answering people's questions, even though I didn't really...
Like maybe it was Dan that my dad was talking to all those years ago.
Yeah, no, that was a bit later. That was like 2003, I guess. And I was using VB6 for prank things too, because I used to prank my stepdad with... so I bought a huge book about Windows 32 API, so like system calls that you could do from Visual Basic. But like I didn't know C, or I couldn't learn C++. I didn't understand it. But you could learn these. You could call these system APIs from Visual Basic. And so I did a few things. Like one thing I did was like a shaken cursor. So it would like set up an interval on, like every 10 milliseconds, it would read the cursor position and then set the cursor position to the previous position plus a random number.
Oh, wow.
So it would just be like this. He thought something was wrong with the mouse. And I put it into auto run. So it would always start.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and the other thing I did was kind of like a similar thing, but it would read the cursor position, and it would also enumerate all the windows in the system, which was like a thing that native apps could do at the time. I don't know if it's like I don't think it's possible on macOS now, but I don't know, maybe. But back then it was like Wild West. You could do anything if you're a native program. So it like enumerated all the windows, found the little start button, and I kind of. Just like whenever the cursor would be over the start button, I would move the start button. So it would just like escape away from you. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh my goodness. But like, I guess, like, it's funny that you say that, because I mean, again, it was a similar journey with me, just kind of diving into the depths of understanding how all these things work, and just through like having fun at the end of the day, you're kind of exploring and learning so much about computers. There was one other thing I need to add to this story. I'm like essentially growing up in high school, like we used to play a lot of Counter-Strike during class, and so I went to a high school where they gave everyone laptops, and obviously if you give a bunch of high school kids laptops, you're going to be playing Counter-Strike on LAN. And so another thing that we learned, this is more of a hardware trick for all you software developers out there, was that if we took our locker key and if we put that over both the power prongs on the USB, like socket, it would actually short circuit the computer and just like turn it off. And so like anytime someone was like, winning in Counter-Strike, we used to be like, key 'em. We'd like just take a key, put it on the USB thing, and then just like short the whole computer so that person was just out. And so, just like crazy things, just crazy pranks way back in the day.
We had computers only in like one class, which is like, like we were taught how to use PowerPoint basically. But I remember I also made the chat app for the class,
right?
But I didn't understand sockets or how to build chat. Like it was just like it made no sense to me. So the way I did it was that we had a shared drive, and I just created a text file there. And so the entire chat, all the clients would constantly read and write to the text file. So it's just like getting huge. And then like there were race conditions and all this stuff, and it was super buggy and slow, but it kind of worked.
I mean, not gonna lie, it was like all these things were just difficult back then. You know what I mean? It was just very difficult. Like you had to read, like you had to get a pirated version of an architect book from the subway to understand UML diagrams. No, but like also the programming languages weren't easy as well. And maybe that's a good segue into React Hot Loader. No, I'm kidding. Into the next phase of things that you worked on. So I mean, you kind of learned at a young age, and you're kind of curious, pranking people, just like fiddling around, and kind of learning and exploring that way. But like, well, essentially, what's the next step of your journey?
So I think like part of it is just I again got a bit more active online on forums. So that was before Stack Overflow was a thing. People would like ask other people about stuff on message boards, and so I got pretty active in like one kind of local message board, and I would just try to answer questions if I didn't like understand them. I just like Google the same thing and then try to kind of understand what's written there, and then try to explain it to the other person, or like load their code, try to figure out why their code doesn't work, and then post the answer.
Interesting.
And so I actually got to be a moderator. So I started moderating a subforum about like C# and .NET. And I was moving into .NET then because Microsoft basically killed Visual Basic. And they released like a different platform, like Microsoft .NET. And they had like a transitional language called Visual Basic .NET, which is kind of similar, but also not really.
It's nothing like VB6. It's really just another syntax for like C# in a way.
And so at some point I was like, okay, I'm going to learn C#. I initially was resistant because I thought, well, I couldn't learn C++ because I just didn't understand where to put the curly braces. But I think like in C# somehow it made sense to me.
And I mean, like, so you know how you made fun of me earlier for calling it React Hot Loader? I'll have you know, Dan, that these days all the kids actually call it C#, and so it's no longer it's no longer called C#.
No way.
It's actually C#. I'll have you know. No, I'm just kidding. Keep going.
It's also C4+ because it's like you can see 4 pluses.
Oh my god! Oh my god! No, like now you're just pranking me. But I find it interesting because, I mean, I spoke with Mark Erickson, I guess a couple of weeks ago now in San Francisco, and he was saying, it's kind of similar to what you're saying, in that his involvement with Redux was really getting involved, like essentially within the issues, reading through the issues, trying to triage the issues, trying to like, replicate the issues, and that's really how he got involved with being, like essentially now the core Redux maintainer. I think along with a few other people, but like essentially that was how he got involved with that. I find it very interesting that for you, it was kind of a similar journey with forums, kind of learning from forums and kind of seeing what people are saying out there, trying to get their code to work or not, and kind of learning through that process and kind of getting familiar with C#.
And so well, when somebody shows up and starts doing their job, at some point you want to just give them your job. So I think that makes sense overall. And I also got involved. I forgot about it, but I got involved in like a competition. So there was but it didn't really make sense. I was really lucky because, it was like a Google competition that I think I don't want to misremember the names. I know a few people, but I don't quite remember the names exactly. But there were basically like a few people in Google open source. Division that were running these programs. And so the more famous program is Google Summer of Code, but it only accepted students. But there was something called Google Highly Open Participation or something like this, which accepted high school students.
High school students. Okay, like the other one accepted university students? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And so and you could pick one of 10 projects, and basically they had like a list of issues and there were some mentors available, and you could just like say, I'm going to work on this issue, and then try to submit a patch, and like it would get reviewed, and like whoever gets the best patches from the maintainer's point of view wins from a project. And there were 10 projects, and the thing is, like, the project that I took was Mono, which is open source re-implementation of .NET.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I was doing like a few tasks for them, and I didn't really get much competition because no cool kids were doing C#. Everybody contributed to like GNOME or Apache or like, popular projects.
Yeah.
And Mono was this weird thing that, people in open source love to hate on it because it's like proprietary platform that's like being re-implemented. There was a lot of like scare about the patents, like Microsoft's doing it or something like this. So nobody wanted to touch it.
Like, and this is again like the old Microsoft, right? It's no longer like the modern Microsoft now, which is obviously very into open source, very into supporting developer communities, et cetera, et cetera. This is like the prior Microsoft that was very much Microsoft first Microsoft. It wasn't like communities Microsoft. Yeah. So anyway.
I don't know. I don't know if I would divide it so strictly. Like it's a company, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just people. But yeah, the strategy was kind of different back then, and and so there was basically like me and like maybe 2 or 3 other people doing these tasks. Whereas for other projects, the competition was like between like there's like 10, 20 people or something like this. So I did a bunch of work there, and then I went to kind of a summer camp or like winter camp, I guess. And I thought, well, I'm gonna lose because I'm just not gonna do anything for 2 weeks. But it turns out they still gonna pick me as a winner.
Oh wow!
So actually,
congrats.
Yeah, I actually got a trip to like that. That was really nice of them. Like I guess like really grateful to Google for this opportunity.
Wow, that's amazing.
They flew us to the Mountain View for like a week.
Oh
we
wow!
Just like visited the campus and stuff.
And this time you're living in Russia.
Yeah, I was.
So they flew you from Russia as a 14-year-old
with my mom. Yeah.
With your mom to Mountain View. Oh wow, that's insane. That's so cool. Wow.
Yeah. So that was kind of a nice validation. Like I felt like, I can figure out things that I don't necessarily know, but I can kind of figure it out on the go. Of course, I did it. Spend the whole days like trying to do these things.
And at this point, you've received no formal training in any of this, right?
And I was also kind of neglecting like everything else. Basically, like I didn't really do much homework. I used to like in school I would like mostly be on my phone and like trying to answer like forum replies. Like I actually had phones had like prediction before like iPhone. There were these prediction engines where it tries to figure out what you type based on which numbers you press.
Yeah.
So like if you press like 4, 3, like 5, 5, 6, something like this, it's like hello. Is the most likely. Or I don't know if I misremember. But anyway, I had there was something called BB code, which is the way before Markdown. It was basically like before Markdown. It was similar to HTML, but it used square brackets. So if you want to bold something...
Oh, right. Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
B and then like /B closes it.
Yep.
And because I spent so much time on forums, my phone actually learned that like 121 means like square bracket B, square bracket, and 1121 is like close it. So it's like constantly, talking on the phone. But eventually I got, like I learned C# and I tried, like by the time I was like 17, I started doing some freelancing.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. That's crazy. Okay. So like that's like a 3-year I guess window there of like forums and learning and okay, cool. So
it was very slow. I'm a very kind of slow learner, so
I mean, like at the end of the day, like so am I. But at the end of the day, like my personal opinion is whenever I hear someone say, "Oh, I learned React in a week," and I'm just like, "Yeah, you can learn the syntax of React in a week, but like understanding the paradigms, understanding like the depth of how it all works, in my opinion, takes a lot of time and writing a lot of code and digging in deep and understanding where things break and rewriting that and redoing it and like all those things just naturally take a lot of time."
And I had like a few kind of pet projects that I built over these years, but for the most part, it was just learning how to, just maintain your own code. Like with each of those projects, at some point, I kind of reached a level where I can't add any new features because it's so buggy.
Right.
And at this point, I would see,
Yeah.
okay, like these things I did, maybe not the best choices, and so on. And so I kind of learned from that.
Yeah.
And then I tried to just like see if I can do this for a living. And so I kind of made like a profile on the freelance website, trying to pretend that I know what I'm doing. And I got a few kind of not offers. What do you call them? Like
contracts or
it was just like small things. Yeah, small contract work.
Oh, it's like essentially gigs. Like you got a few gigs.
Yeah, so I just needed to like make a small app or like implement a feature or something like this, and it was like $200 for like a week of work or something like this.
Oh wow, okay.
So it was pretty low, but it was also like for a kid it was nice.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just felt like I got a bit of experience. I can do these things, and then I got a job when I was 18.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you're out of high school at this point. Started freelancing at 17. Got a job at 18. So what? You didn't go to university?
No, I did go to university for 1 year.
Oh, okay. Was that when you were 17 or?
Yeah,
so I don't
think
know how
it
the
was,
schooling system works.
Yeah, I don't remember either. I think I was like the summer I was turning 17 to 18.
Gotcha.
I went to university, and then basically like at the end of first year, I was like, I don't know if I want to do more of this, and I got a job that summer after the first university year, and I just stopped going there, and I think like essentially I don't know if they expelled me or something. Like
yeah,
I just didn't. Never showed up.
For me it was similar. For me they suspended me from university and that was kind of it. It was the same thing. I went to university for 1 year, didn't enjoy it, and then I just started working immediately after that. But yeah, like essentially for me they technically suspended me. So I had like I think like a 1 year suspension because I just didn't show up, and so they're like don't come back. I'm like like one step ahead of you. You know what I mean? Like no worries.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's something similar. Yeah. Cool. So you started working as a full-time salaried software developer.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
okay.
The way I found this job was I went to there was like a lecture that some person was given who was like I think either a COO or something like this of this outsourcing company that basically like builds just like enterprise software. And I heard about them before, and that 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 it's like nice to work there. And so I went to a lecture by this person, and then after the lecture I just asked, I hire in like .NET people. I was like, yeah, sure, like send a resume. And so I sent like I got a really like I was like, I won this contest, and I did this like for my freelance clients, and like I actually had one successful thing that I even did for free at the freelance website. So some person contacted me and say, hey, do this, create this program. I will not pay you, but you can like put your name on it and get get other gigs from it.
And it worked?
It actually worked.
Oh, wow, okay. I would not recommend doing this at all. Not at all. But I mean, hey, if it worked for you, then hey.
Well, it was just very good. Like, I think it's, I still see sometimes, like people still use it sometimes. I think
what? Wow.
It is.
Are you still getting contacted today for maintenance work, Dan? Is that how?
No, the link is that. Like the link doesn't go anywhere. But I saw like reviews of the software on YouTube like a few years ago.
What? So that's so cool. Oh wow, that's actually really cool. Wow.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that project. And it was just fun to do. But again, like I had a lot of free time. I didn't really, I was still in high school. I didn't really need to work or do anything. So. I basically I had a lot of free time, so I could do that. It's harder to do if you don't have free time.
Yeah.
And by free time, I also include the nights. So,
Yeah, I have to say, like one thing I know about Dan is basically you're a bit of a night owl, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like everyone I've talked to, like I think Andrew, Mark, Maggie, like they're all like, yeah, Dan's a bit of a night owl. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I can
But
see
I
you
also
on,
wake up very late.
I can
so
see
I
you
don't
on
do
Twitter. Yeah, I see you on Twitter, like like essentially into the morning this time zone. But yeah,
Yeah.
you only get started kind of later on anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so I and I had something to show that was actually, and they gave me, like, I didn't have, there was no CS kind of interview, so I entirely kind of dodged these in my life so far. It was just a practical one. I think it was like the task they gave me is basically like in 10 minutes or like 15 minutes implement like a window that shows the names of all currently running processes, and I think like gives an option to like stop them or something.
Okay.
And I knew I knew .NET.
You mentioned before, like you did this in Visual Basic way back in the day.
Yeah, it was kind of similar.
Similar enough.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I kind of knew how to do it. And then I worked there for 2 years, just doing C#, kind of outsourcing, like dealing with really nasty, like incomprehensible code that another outsourcing agency did. And I once actually, they flew me to New York to some like investment company that was that was like our client.
Yeah.
And I needed to replace a piece of software that was like super broken, and I didn't understand how it worked at all. And like the thing that I was doing was basically like adding logs everywhere.
But and don't tell me like you ended up bringing your mom to this one too, did you?
No. So this was I was already 19. But I had to like put logs everywhere just to understand what it was supposed to do, and then I kind of like rewrote some parts and like changed it. But then the day I was supposed to present it, the day before that, I was just going out super late, and I overslept the entire thing. So I was supposed to present, the results of the project at 9 a.m.
And first thing in the morning. Oh wow!
Yeah,
okay.
and I woke up at like 1 p.m.
Oh good! Oh my goodness!
Yeah, and
and that was due to jet lag as well, or was that just
I
you
lived
just
for
being?
A month there.
Oh wow! Okay, so you really have no excuse other than you were up late. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it was kind of awkward, but like my boss kind of smoothed it over. But I realized maybe this is not the kind of job that I want to do.
Yeah.
At some point, like after I get back, at some point I just realized I want to quit, so I quit it.
So you were there for 2 years. You just quit because it just wasn't for you anymore.
Yeah, I felt like I don't like I want to do something.
Which is totally fair, but quitting a job, especially like young and like at this at this point you're still building your career, still building that resume. I mean, you might have had that one that really cool project. At least you're starting to add more lines to your resume now. Like, what did you find another job, or like what happened next?
So we went to, me and my friend, we just kind of went like backpack traveling for a couple of weeks. I only took my
Where did you go?
So we went to Crimea before it was annexed by Russia. So it was still legit to go there at the time. And we basically spent like 2 weeks barely with any mobile connection. I think we were just kind of chilling and relaxing the entire time.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And it just kind of felt like a reset. Because I realized I was just burning out. I don't enjoy it.
You kind of like took that time to kind of understand a bit more of what you wanted to do, and like kind of like, yeah.
I don't think I really understood anything. I just wanted a hard break that, just...
Starting to burn out, as you said.
Yeah, just like switch off and then later switch on.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then... And I also felt like I'm like my skills are kind of... It felt like a dead end because everybody was doing something web related, and then I only knew desktop. And so I didn't know mobile, I didn't know web. I felt like, what am I even doing?
Right.
So I wanted to learn like web development.
Right. Yeah.
So that's how I got into. So when I came back, I was actually thinking, like maybe I should like apply to some kind of a school or like learn web development somehow. And I saw like an advertisement for a course or something like this. and thought like maybe I should do it. So I think I still had some.
Don't tell me you went to boot camp in Russia, because I think that means something different over there than it means over here. So what? But you went to a school. You went to a coding school.
So it wasn't really coding school. So the way that worked is basically there was a person who came back from Silicon Valley to Russia and was doing some projects in kind of educational sphere.
Oh, okay.
So kind of like around like video education and stuff like this. So I think there was like public utility in those projects, and he basically wrote that he rented out the place, and he suggested that whoever wants to work on those projects is welcome to come.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Wow. Okay.
So basically, like he didn't pay anyone to be there. We didn't pay to be taught. There were no teachers because we just tried to teach each other, and we had root access to all of his projects. So
What?
basically, we could like knock down his server, which happened a bunch of times.
So a bunch of people that weren't paid had root access to all the servers and were just fiddling with stuff.
Yeah, so we learned, that's where I learned Git, a little bit of Python, a little bit of CSS, a little bit of JavaScript, a little bit of Django, a little bit of relational databases and stuff in like a month or two.
Yeah. And you learned how to take down a few servers as well.
Yeah, a little bit of that as well. Yeah, but I think like from the people who originally came, there were like maybe 30 people. I think like maybe 5 or 4 kind of actually stayed involved throughout this time.
Okay. Yeah.
And then he kind of, for people who were, doing good work, like he also helped with like introductions to like different tech companies and kind of saying, oh, like this person is doing really well and so on. So I think like everybody found jobs like pretty soon after that.
Yeah.
And I was, I think I had some money saved from the previous job, but I was basically running out of money. So I moved back with my mom and I lived with my mom for like 2 months. And then after that, I was organizing these little meetups where we would just meet and in that space and watch Coursera videos.
Oh, cool. Oh, wow. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I was doing machine learning and compilers because those two topics seemed super mysterious to me. And halfway through them, I realized that I really don't care about them at all because I see it's not magic. And I thought, well, it's kind of boring. So I just kind of abandoned it. But one person who I talked to who also came to these meetups, this person said that somebody else was looking for like developers and he recommended me. And I was sick at the time with mono. And I was like, I don't care, like go away. I feel so bad right now. But this person like emailed me and I was like, I don't want to talk. And then like he emailed me again. And then I said, okay, let's chat. And actually he turned out like this person who talked to me, he was building a startup in Moscow, which was really, like, I thought it was really interesting because this person was not like technical at all. He was kind of, it's pretty hard to describe him. I guess he was like an event promoter originally. They kind of threw parties in Moscow.
Right.
So like he had some like GQ profiles. Like that's like the first stuff the first thing I found with him is like a GQ profile. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. But he turned out to be like a completely great guy, and so he wanted to build this kind of DIY publishing platform where you could just like throw some text images, apply some kind of effects. Something like this, and
then you built it in PowerPoint, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, well, I guess there are some similarities again, but I just really I like the idea, and
then with PowerPoint you're also able to export like essentially as a web page, and I'm not sure if you got to that menu function. It's just like file, export, web, and then you can actually export a PowerPoint as a web.
But I think it only works in Internet Explorer.
It only used to work in Internet Explorer. You're right. But I used to do that way back in the day. But anyway, I'm hijacking your story. So like you worked essentially for this person. You started building web apps.
Well, we didn't start with web because the original idea was like an iPad app.
Oh, okay.
So we, but none of the people like that were hired knew how to do that.
I mean, it's probably pretty new back then too, right?
Yeah, a little bit, but it was kind of funny that the entire team that was hired to do this app didn't know how to do it, so we just figured it out as. So we only like the language we knew in common was C#.
Right.
So we were like, well, let's use this mono thing that like
right, yep.
contributed, a little bit to. So
Yeah,
I was kind of familiar with it, and there was like a way to use it to write C# that would run on iPad. And so we did that, and so I learned, how to kind of set it up, and like we would like submit some bug reports and stuff like this. But I think there were like 4 or 5 people working on this app, and so we figured out how to do it. We made an iPad app, and later the startup kind of pivoted to web. So we need to build a web version.
Gotcha.
And I didn't know how to do that either, except that little experience I had with JavaScript back then. But we had one colleague who kind of knew how to structure stuff, so like he kind of created like a skeleton of it, and then I kind of learned more JavaScript.
Were you using what, like jQuery, like were you using any sort of framework back then?
Yeah, so we're actually using CoffeeScript.
Oh wow!
Remember that? So
yeah, I love CoffeeScript. Well, I hate it now. I hate CoffeeScript now. But back then, CoffeeScript was great because like writing actual JavaScript was terrible, and so
it had some.
It had its pros and cons. Yeah.
But yeah, so we used CoffeeScript.
This was what, like
jQuery.
2011 then? 2012?
It was 2012.
2012?
Yeah. So we used maybe 2013.
2013?
Yeah, so we were using Backbone, jQuery.
Oh wow, Backbone as well. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Like using like the typical like Rails developer JavaScript stack, basically.
Yeah.
Of like I know Ruby, therefore I'm going to use CoffeeScript for everything. I
haven't thought about it that way because I didn't know. I tried to learn Rails like Ruby a few times. I just noped out. I couldn't understand it. Like had this with C++, with Ruby.
It's funny you say that because the first language I learned was JavaScript because I was trying to make a video game. Couldn't make a video game. And then I learned C++. I was 11 at the time. So I learned C++ when I was 11, built the worst video game engine ever when I was 11. And then many years later went on to learn Rails and then obviously JavaScript and everything. So basically all those things that essentially you didn't do are all the things that I did. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think brought us all to React. And so, yeah. But anyway, sorry. So you were building an app using CoffeeScript, Backbone, and jQuery at the time. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and so it was pretty hard because it was like a very dynamic app. Like, I mean, it is kind of like PowerPoint, right? Like you can drag shapes, you can kind of just like you have this canvas on which you can do things, and then like you want to be able to like add or remove things and so on. So it was kind of difficult to do in Backbone, and like a colleague, the one who's more experienced, showed React to me, and I thought like, wow, this is so bad. And then
oh my goodness,
he showed it again like a few months later, and he was like, no, you should give it a try. And so I tried to convert like one button to React. It was amazing. It was like, oh, this simplifies the code so much. And so we converted the entire our entire front end to React. With like still shipping features. Like we didn't do it's not like this is the next thing. So it was actually speeding us up.
Made things easier and it made the workflow better and it just improved the quality of life for being a developer. But like it's funny you said that your initial reaction was you kind of didn't like it because I mean like it was same with me. My initial reaction. I remember seeing React being introduced at JSConf and I think the whole crowd was like no because at that point it was so like ingrained in us to like separate HTML and CSS and JavaScript. I remember when we saw JSX for the first time, we're like, wait, you're putting the HTML in the JavaScript? Like, no. We don't do things that way. We separate things out very specifically. And I remember the whole crowd like kind of rejected it. We came back the next year and we started, kind of accepting it and getting used to it. And again, like actually starting to use it, we kind of really started to really appreciate all the things it had in it. But yeah, like essentially that was my experience. And I think a lot of the community's experience way back in those days of just like, no, actually it might be good. Yeah.
Yeah. So we tried it, didn't go back, and just started using React.
That's awesome. So started using React. Well, rewrote your Backbone app in React. Like I've never heard that story before. No, I'm just kidding. Everyone rewrote their Backbone apps into something or the other, into like Angular or Ember or React or something. I think you're probably one of the earlier ones to rewrite everything into React. If I'm not mistaken, back in those days.
There wasn't really much.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, I think the earliest person to use React in production outside of Facebook was Sophie Alpert.
Right.
With Khan Academy, using it for some kind of, I think, math formula editor or something like that. I don't remember the exact project, but she basically put it in production like a week after it was released. So yeah, but I think we used it fairly early because there wasn't
definitely using it pretty early.
A lot of, like there wasn't React Router back then. There was something called React Router Component, which is a bit different. So yeah, there was like there wasn't anything for like managing, document title or something like this.
Yeah.
There wasn't really anything that fit my purposes for like drag and drop.
There wasn't even hooks, anyone. Come on.
So it was, and we didn't really know, how do you think in React?
But admittedly for me, I started using React a few years later. I think I started using React 2014, 2015, that time period. And back then it was still React.create class. Was it still React.create class when you were using it too? Yeah, I mean, like, and to be honest, like, it worked fine. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not the syntax that appealed to me about React. It was the paradigm and the paradigm shift that just made everything easier to reason about. And that's what I enjoyed about React, especially coming from Backbone or other frameworks. Was just the paradigm shift, and that's what I really enjoyed. But anyway, so you started using React more, and then like, what happened from then onwards?
So the startup folded.
Oh no!
And
I hope you hopefully it wasn't because of you. Come on.
No, it wasn't because of me. I hope not. But I was also, like at the time, I was just kind of working on my first open source projects that like people actually like noticed, and I guess like React Hot Loader was the main one.
Yeah.
So I just noticed that. It seemed, well, I saw this talk by Brad Victor called Invention on Principle, which again, I think like I don't think Brad Victor himself would be particularly excited about the way people picked the easy stuff from his talks and not the actual, the essence. But like, I think incremental progress is good. So in the talk, there was this thing where you could change the code and see it kind of change in real time without resetting the state of your application, like without fully reloading every time. And that was really like a big pain point for us. And I just kind of we were just about to migrate our app to Webpack because we used like a different tool before that, Require.js. And it just didn't have code splitting. So we needed something different. And I noticed that Webpack had this feature, like a first-class feature for some kind of module replacement, where if you edit something, you can specify some logic that would determine what happens to the code you edited. And I just kind of put it together that, like React has this paradigm that's like the state is kind of, like it's not in module level variables, it's inside of React. So actually, if you just replace the component on the go, it should still kind of work in many cases. And like kind of like a pure function. So it is, again, also, if you replace a pure function, it doesn't change anything. So it kind of felt like these two things they should work together. And so I kind of like tried to make it work. It was super hacky, the first version. Like I had to change some code inside React just to like work around.
I remember it was like, apply this diff, and then it was like, then it will work. Yeah.
And I think but I was sure that it's doable because it just made sense in theory. And like I remember like that day, like I stayed until like 7 a.m. And then like at 7 a.m. I got it working. And I was like, nice, I'm going to make a small video, tweet it, and go to sleep. And so I tweeted it, and it was picked up, like I think by Christopher Shadow at BitHunt. So it's like, oh, cool example, and people started following me. And I was, this is not just like my fever dream. It's actually useful. And of course, I just started to make more releases and kind of try to fix issues, remove this need for like monkey patch and React. and that became like really popular, my first popular project.
It's like for me on a very personal level, it's so nourishing, soul nourishing to kind of hear it from your perspective, because essentially I started following Dan like around that time, and obviously I'm seeing it from the outsider perspective of seeing this great open source library that I started using. I remember having to patch React. I remember having to fiddle around with all these things. I remember thinking like, geez, this guy's like on it. You know what I mean? There's like all these releases, all these things coming out, all these improvements coming out. Like I remember thinking at the time, like he's kind of one of those like hacker types that just seems to be like one of those genius hacker types of just like hacking away at this thing, and like it is actually proving like some serious value for us down the road. And I remember thinking like, what is this guy like thinking to like kind of connect all these dots? Because like I remember like for me, my own personal web dev experience is like hot loading was a whole new world for me. I mean, like I've never had any of that. Like I used to hit the refresh button like on my browser, essentially like an ape these days. I'm some sort of caveman these days, hitting the refresh button on the browser, losing all my state, refreshing the whole thing, having to like replay the entire like client side state to try to get back to where I was. And all this time you're losing such precious like time context switching in and out of this environment. I'm just like, wow, okay, like this tool dramatically changes my workflow, dramatically makes things better for me and really for the whole team, just to kind of continue doing. And so it's so lovely hearing it from your side.
Yeah, but I don't.
yeah.
I take issue with the genius comment, because I think like it was really like I think like I like to do execution. I don't really do like ideas. And I think in this case, like the idea itself was up in the air, and like somebody would have done it at some point.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think the part. Well, I think the reason why I say that is I think in comparison to my own headspace at the time. You know what I mean? It's not so much as like a general statement. It's more like to say that like I was not thinking of it at all in that way. You know what I mean? So like compared to like where I was and how I was thinking about things, that to me appeared as if it was is basically quite revolutionary.
Yeah,
And
but
so,
I think like really the way this works is where like I have like, because I had this like inspiration from like Brett's talk, right? So I had this picture of my head. Oh, this is what it should be like, because it just makes sense. You see this once and you're like, yeah, this is how it should work, of course. And then like you see these pieces that are like, oh, maybe you can take this piece developed by this person and this piece developed by this person, and maybe you can make these ideas kind of like put them together to make it do this thing, and then you treat it as a product, right? Like you think like what is the diff between how it works now and the thing in Brett Victor's video, and you just like hack away at the at the things that are missing.
Right.
So it's pretty messy, I think, overall. But ultimately it's just like, how do you want it to work, and you try to make it work somehow.
Yeah.
There isn't necessarily like, I think I actually like got some decent insights about like kind of like the next iteration, which I did like 4 or 5 years later.
I remember.
Which is like fast refresh, which we actually like added as a first class React feature. Like we support it now because it's actually like we can stand behind it. It actually makes sense. But it didn't make sense before hooks. So hooks kind of solved a bunch of things that would never have that like necessitated all these hacks that I had in the past versions. And also it just didn't really quite make sense before hooks, and then hooks kind of fixed the flaws that I had there.
Yep. That makes a ton of sense. So that's kind of how you got to where, again, I started following you from. And so that kind of clears up a lot of gaps in kind of my understanding of your journey and kind of how you got there. From Hot Loader, again, you kind of were introduced to essentially to the community, introduced to kind of a lot of folks working with React. And yeah, like how did you, so at this point you're still in Russia.
Yeah.
How did you get from there to here in London?
Yeah. So, like I said, the startup was folding, and I was working on my talk. So I signed up to do a talk at React Europe.
Oh, cool. I think that was the first React Europe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so 2015.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about like hot reloading, but I thought that would be boring now because somebody else showed it at ReactConf earlier.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
Another person did to talk about this stuff. I like, well, what's the point now? It's not going to be exciting anymore, which is actually like a mistake. Like it would have been exciting anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think like I was really applying like a really kind of high bar. And it would be like my first kind of big talk because like I did like I think like a couple of talks before, but they were like not very good at like meetups. So I wanted to do this one well, and I threw in the description of the talk. I threw in that also it's going to have some kind of time travel, so like some ability to see the past states and switch between them, which is also what I saw in like Brett Victor's demo, right? Like it was like this game where you could change the jump in logic and then see how that changes the jump trajectory. Like you could go backwards and forwards in time. And so I think a lot of people kind of treat it as a gimmick. I think that's not fair, but I also agree that it is like time travel is a lot, like reliable time travel is a lot harder than like reliable hot reloading. And like replay IO is like actually an example of reliable time travel where obviously this is how it should work. Like
and
you can't argue with that, right?
You can't argue with that, and like I'm assuming essentially you've gotten a demo of replay, you've seen how it works and all of that.
I mean, recently, yeah.
Yeah, like I've also very recently gotten a demo of replay, and it kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
Kind of seeing it all work in that way. But anyway, sorry.
I was just saying like, it felt like it's the right thing to do, but it's just, can we do this today? Can we try to do this today? I think it's mostly been a failure in this way. But anyway, I was just trying to figure out, I wrote this in the description of the talk. I didn't know how to do it. I also didn't want to look at how other people did it. So I knew that like Elm had something related to it. I knew a little bit about Elm architecture, but I was kind of scared at looking what their thing can do because it might rely on constraints that are like Elm unique, and then I'll feel bad. So I have this like mental block sometimes at not looking at existing solutions because I'm scared that they'll be so good I'll be discouraged. So I didn't actually look at like or like I know ClojureScript had Figwheel, which is
right. Yep.
Well, I don't know if it has time travel though. Maybe it does. But anyway, I was just trying to figure it out by myself, and then and I realized that I can't really make this work for React State because, well, I just have no access to it from outside.
Right.
But I can do this for kind of application state, and like Flux architecture was very popular, and so I started talking to Andrew Clark, who made the most popular Flux library, and
I think and I forget the name of that one.
Flummox,
right? Yes, Flummox. I think there was a bunch of competing Flux libraries around the same time. I think Jing Chen. Am I getting the name correct?
Jing Chen. She's co-creator of Flux.
She gave the talk on Flux architecture. Myself and everyone else then went and created their own Flux frameworks, and so like Andrew was one of them, of course. Created Flummox, and then so you started talking to Andrew.
Yeah, so I started talking to Andrew, and I also like heard I don't know from somebody else. Like I saw a talk where there was this idea that Flux stores, they're kind of conceptually very similar to reducer functions. And I was like, well, what if it was actually a function? That would make my job easier because I can just replace it on the go. And like if the state is somewhere else, I have control over it. So I should be able to like move it, make it kind of replayable. Again, I don't think it's a very promising direction like in practice now, but it was just what I was trying to do at the time. And so I just had, like Flux with reducers, like Redux. It's just, and I didn't even know that was actually a word in English language.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it was just like a word play.
Well, are you saying that Redux never existed as a word back in Visual Basic, where that kind of got a lot of English from?
Yeah. yeah, so I had this idea, and then like we made it together with Andrew Clark, and I did this talk, and yeah, the talk was very popular, I guess, and I also met Jing there at the conference.
Oh wow, okay.
And I already talked to her before because I made another library called Normalizer, which is used to like, if you have a REST backend but Flux front end, it kind of massaged the data to be in the form that's easy to consume.
Oh, okay.
And so I thought maybe it's a stupid idea, maybe it doesn't make sense.
Well, the battery just died, so we're gonna kind of pick up from where we think we were when the battery was still going. And geez, like if to time travel debug this interview in a way to kind of go back in time to where we were. So let's see. Let's just start again from So you were talking to Andrew Clark. He created a library called Flummox, and you're talking to him about still working on your talk for React Europe.
Yeah. So I submitted this talk proposal. I had this idea about time travel, which I didn't know how to do, so I kind of needed to figure that out. And I started figuring it out in like the last 4 weeks before the conference. So this was pretty stressful. But because you can't really make. I didn't have control over React state, so I couldn't make like React state go backwards and forwards. So I needed to, and I also wanted to do this for application level state as well. And so I was kind of thinking, what changes do I need to make to Flux architecture to make that possible?
Right.
And so the way I thought about it was like, well, if it's just like pure functions, and then you pull out the state somewhere else, like out of the files that you write, then it's possible to replace the implementations without killing the state, or it's possible to like use that state and like supply a different state so that you can like go forwards or go backwards and so on. And so I had this idea for I just needed a name for this thing, and so I thought, well, I saw in some talks somebody described like Flux as stores as being similar to reducer functions. So I thought it would be funny to make like upon like reducers, Flux, Redux. And I didn't even know that like Redux was an actual word in the English language. So I made that kind of demo.
I think like essentially Redux was actually a pretty good name for the library. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, not knowing it was a word, not knowing the meaning of the word, just kind of picking it as a word. At the end of the day, it ended up being a pretty good name to actually describe essentially what it's doing. So and the whole time travel aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good branding. Maybe too good. And so I talked to Andrew, and we kind of started working together on it. And then like I did the talk, and the talk was actually really well received. And so at the conference I met Jing, and so we already talked to her on the IRC before, because I did this other library called Normalizer, which kind of massages REST API endpoint data into something that's easy to consume on the front end.
Okay.
Just normalizing it for for Flux stores. And so like I already talked to her. She was like, oh, like, this normalizer thing, like asked for her opinion. She says, yeah, it seems like a fine idea. So when I met her at the conference, like that was awesome because I knew who she was. So we talked for a little bit, and she said that, like actually we're hiring in London. And I didn't know that because I talked to Facebook recruiters earlier, but basically I didn't have the necessary years of experience, and I also didn't have a degree, so I couldn't apply for like work visa in the US.
Oh, okay.
So they just said, yeah, like sorry, and then Jin said that they're hiring in London. So I was like,
I'm curious, like so you're looking for obviously a work visa through Facebook. Did you also look at like an O1 visa with the US? Was that a thing at the time, or
that was a thing?
It just wasn't overly accessible, or?
I just didn't know. Well, like you needed to hire somebody. Like I didn't have like so much money lying around.
Oh, no, like essentially for O1, it's just like a talent visa, and so if you can prove your talent.
Yeah, but you have to make the application. It just sounds.
You mean hire someone like a lawyer to help you with the application? Got it. Yeah.
I was like, that.
Like if Facebook could help with that, but then that's a whole other discussion with them. Yeah.
So I was just, I knew a few people who did that, but it just seemed like way too much.
Yeah.
I don't like papers. And so she said they're hiring in London. So she actually arranged, because there were like 4 speakers from Facebook at the conference.
Oh, right.
She arranged like on the second day. I actually missed the second half of the conference, and they just did like an interview actually there. But it's the same interview process that we do.
Oh,
with other
really?
people. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Like shout out to Jing. I mean, she's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, she
I ended up. I ended up meeting her in 2014. She came to JSConf and had the pleasure of kind of meeting her there. And she's such a lovely person. I have no idea what she's up to these days, but absolutely lovely person. Yeah. So from there, you got the Facebook interview over in Paris. I believe this was during the second day of React Europe, and I guess that's kind of how you eventually got to London.
Yeah. So I called my wife and said, I thought for some reason I thought that she would not be excited about it, because it's a big change. We've never been to London,
Right.
We've never been to UK. We don't even know what it's like.
Wow.
And she was like, yeah, sure, let's go. So it still took us like half a year to like get the visa and everything sorted. But then, then we moved and been here for like 6 years now.
Oh, wow. Oh, I've been here for like just over 5 years. So you've only been here like about a year more than me. Okay, wow. Oh, I had no idea. Like for some reason, I thought you were here longer than that. I thought you were here a few years before me. I didn't realize that it was just like 1 year. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's awesome. That's such a cool story. And I guess for everyone else out there, I guess kind of what happened from that point onwards is, at least in the public eye, is a bit more easier to track and easier to follow. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you have a lot of great stories from behind the scenes, but kind of hearing about how you started and how you got here to London as well, for me, it kind of filled in a lot of gaps from seeing things online, seeing things on Twitter. Again, like I started following you from Hotloader, and I was watching what happened at React Europe and through Redux, and I kind of lived all those experiences essentially from a consumer's perspective. Kind of hearing it from your perspective, fills in a lot of gaps in my understanding and my knowledge. Mm-hmm. So, if I can ask you maybe one more, maybe a bit more delicate question before we get going. Essentially, Dan, you're from Russia, you're Russian, and I'm kind of curious. You're living in London now. I'm kind of curious about your thoughts, of Russia as things have changed, obviously from your time there and basically today.
Yeah, I think the first thing I should say is I think war is bad.
High five.
I think it's kind of difficult to talk about Russia in general because, of course, I have family there and I have some friends there, and it's also hard to generalize because I think it's definitely true there are many people who don't want the war. I think there's also a pretty broad support for it in general, but then there's also a lot of propaganda, and it's just very kind of multidimensional in that sense. To what extent do you blame people for believing the propaganda? And I don't think there's I can see both sides to this question, but I think there is some collective responsibility. But also I'm not there anymore, and I'm it's something that we have to grapple with, I think, as Russians, especially including people who went away, kind of have to think about it. But I think the way I kind of see it historically is when I was born in the 90s. So 90s were a very strange time in Russia because it was Soviet Union fell apart.
The fall of the Soviet Union,
and it was. I think people sometimes don't really understand what it was like, but there was basically no food in. It wasn't that you couldn't necessarily get work or nobody wanted to work or anything. Even if you worked, you go to a shop, there is no food, and stuff like this. So it was kind of a very strange time. And then some people got super rich during that time. And like my family went from, kind of not poverty, but kind of like lower kind of middle class to like higher middle class because of like a family business. So it was possible to build business then, and it was just a completely random time, I'd say. There was a lot of, well, I guess there was like an attempt to kind of build a democratic society, but also kind of not really. So there was like a lot of people with Soviet mentality started taking over it. But there was free media. So I think that's certainly true. I remember when I was growing up, because everything became so kind of unregulated that it was kind of like a Wild West in many senses, to the point that like one of the things that early like one of the things that happened like early on after the fall of Soviet Union was there was like a TV program broadcasted on official TV where like one kind of avant-garde musician was just telling a conspiracy theory that Lenin was a mushroom. And this was, this was kind of like a performance piece, sort of.
But you were able to do that on state media.
Yeah, that happened on state media. And then like babushkas would like call, like it was like a whole completely surrealistic thing.
Oh, wow.
And I remember like there were political programs, there were like, different kinds of media, like there were kind of more pro-government and like pro-opposition channels, and you could kind of get the idea of what's going on by like just like watch all of them and kind of take an average.
Right.
You kind of see.
And again, like I have a very limited understanding, so please excuse my ignorance. But my very limited understanding is a lot of this would be in Russian, of course. And today as well, a lot of it is obviously still in Russian, and a lot of the people only speak Russian, of course. So a lot of the media, a lot of the non-Russian media would be kind of out of reach, out of.
Well, there were there were a bunch of like radio stations. Of course, all content was in Russian, but there were some kind of Western-backed stations that were like broadcasting, and with time, I just remember like kind of a sharp turn. After I think the first Putin's presidency, and like during, when some critical channels were like closed or they changed owners, and gradually you could see like kind of the move to like a more totalitarian state where the independent media was getting more and more niche. And like the state media would have, like a cohesive kind of story that they're trying to tell, and it, like I think it kind of coincided with, I guess, there wasn't really any unifying story about the nation, because like a lot of people were attached to the old idea of like Soviet Union, and then that fell apart, and like what is the national identity, right?
Right.
So the way that government decided to do this was to build a cult of winning the war.
Right.
So winning the World War II, which is not even called that way in Russia, it's called the Great Patriotic War.
Oh, wow.
Because it excludes the areas, like for example, when like USSR planned to collaborate with Germany. So that's why the Great Patriotic War kind of starts after that.
Oh, wow.
So that
I had no idea.
We don't have to talk about this.
Wow.
Yeah, I had no idea either, because it wasn't taught in our books. But it just became like because there's a day when that's celebrated, which is like the 9th of May. And I just remember that the parades, like they were previously kind of focused on people, and there were even some presence from like actual veterans, of course, but also like for example, protests about those veterans not even getting any support, being like below the line of poverty.
Wow.
And things like this. And then gradually kind of grew more and more militaristic, and more about like a national idea that we are the nation that won against like the fascists. And I think that's kind of like now it's just being used as like they're trying to apply the same logic, but of course it doesn't really work. And so it's I think like it's a big crisis of identity for the entire nation. And
Wow.
I have no idea how, like what is like how it can end in some good way. So
That's
I guess
crazy.
we'll just observe.
That's crazy. Yeah, I've obviously have nothing to add other than yeah, thanks so much for sharing. I can only imagine how difficult it is for, as you said, people like yourself and many others out there.
Well, it's less difficult than being bombed. So
It's less difficult than being bombed, but I can only imagine still any sort of reference or any sort of affiliation at all, especially as you said, still having at the end of the day, family and friends living there, and I'm not going to get into the whole situation, but all I'm trying to say is thank you for sharing, and I appreciate you sharing for really all of us to help understand. But yeah, I guess at the end of the day, thanks again, Dan, for coming and telling us your story, and hopefully, all of you out there can kind of draw some inspiration from Dan and kind of his journey. And at the end of the day, we're kind of curious to see essentially what you're up to next. So thanks again, buddy. Good to see you. It's been a pleasure. Awesome. Well, see you next time. Bye.